Welcome back to the TSL3 Grand Finals. mouz.ThorZaIN up 1-0, taking on a really clever build, but just exploited against Dignitas.NaNiwa. Here we are on GSL Crevasse, modified to be TSL3, and we have yet again spawned cross positions. In the top left, we have the Protoss player, Dignitas.NaNiwa, taking on newly moved to mouz.ThorZaIN as the Blue Terran. And this is, now that we're on a kind of twisty map, like Crevasse, I think it's really interesting to see how quickly these players expand. We've often seen 14 command centers, 15 nexuses out of both races on this map, and I would not be surprised to see that here on Crevasse. Fast rushes through these windy paths, not that strong on this map.
And look at ThorZaIN already trying to block off his own mineral patches with a supply depot, showing that any disadvantage is not too big of a disadvantage for Swede. So he is going to be burrowing that supply depot, no doubt, unless he has something tricky in store. NaNiwa, in the meantime, is chrono boosting away on those probes. We haven't seen a scout yet from either player, so perhaps exactly as you say, Chill, we may see the early expand come out of both these players. NaNiwa a little bit late on that second chrono boost, but of course, half a second is not actually that big of a deal. But you know, we're still going to point that out. We're still going to go, oh, half a second. What a total bronze leaguer. In the meantime, it looks like, exactly as you say, Chill, Pro's being queued up for an early expo.
Yeah, he's queued right up to 15, actually got a 16 probe, now queued up and rallying that over to his natural, so we're going to see very fast expansions from both players, and I like that on Crevasse. Crevasse, the rush distance so long that it's just so difficult to punish players here for doing this. As the warp gate timing has been changed, yeah, there is a little bit of punishment that can be done to Protoss. If you can hit just before they get that critical number of units out, before warp gate has really started to pay off. We've seen some players able to do that, but their cross positions, a safer play, just go for the fast expansion, take it to the mid game with a strong macro build.
Now, what's interesting, though, is that we've seen some developments of how to punish these sorts of early expands for Protoss, where the Terran player will go 1 Rax, prepare for an early expand, but if he sees the Protoss go Nexus first, the Terran can actually immediately throw down 2 more barracks and then do a semi-all-in. I guess there's no such thing as a semi-all-in. You're either all-in or you're not, but you bring SCVs with the attack, and almost always it's an easy win. And even if you don't end up winning at those early stages, you can still do a significant amount of damage. Seen a lot of those Korean players like MMA pull that sort of style off. Looks like ThorZaIN does have the 2 racks at the front, getting the orbital command at the front, and soon enough, an orbital command at the back.
So NaNiwa actually sending a probe to scout his main base. I always like to look for that, players being safe, want to check for the cheese. The 1 in 100 times when you find it, it's really going to pay off. And he's also saved up a lot of chrono boost on his main nexus. He had it actually approaching 80 before he dropped it on that first zealot, and I'm surprised to see not getting a second gateway. After a fast expansion, you can really go gateway, core. He's got a little bit of a bank saved up, but let's see how he transitions out of this. I would not be surprised to see him transition into gateway units. Got a little bit of gas saved up, taking his second gas, so it may be a robotics, and clearly he's going to drop all this chrono boost on warp gate research. He's got it saved up to 60 now after dropping that first chrono boost on warp gate technology. ThorZaIN, in the meanwhile, getting the 2 barracks up, as you mentioned, and transitioning into 2 more geysers here. Both players relatively safe from any sort of aggression, and just looking to see how they're going to take this into the mid game.
And I really like the fact that NaNiwa is getting these early 2 gateways. You just do not know what kind of possibilities your opponent can be going for at this phase. So you're really almost forced to get those 2 early gates. And I mean, even in ThorZaIN's position, if you saw him going 1 gate straight tech to Robo, you can almost punish that with any strategy early on. So in a sense, NaNiwa, by taking this early expansion, is essentially forfeiting a lot of big variety of his tech. We see ThorZaIN now getting that 3rd barracks. I'm curious if he's going to be going for any sort of very fast double eBay as we've seen him do before.
Yeah, especially with the double refinery, and really he hasn't found a gas dump yet. Now making a factory, so he may be transitioning into medevacs very quickly. Going to put that supply depot up on the high ground to spot. He's got a bunker locking down any sort of early aggression possibilities, and I like that NaNiwa is transitioning into the Robo after 3 gateways. That's going to keep him safe against any sort of cloaking attacks. He's probably found at this point that, or he's got to be able to assume that ThorZaIN himself has expanded. He can't confirm that as he can't get in the main, but he saw the 2 barracks at the natural. He hasn't seen anything really push out from ThorZaIN. But with this well-timed robotics, he's going to be able to chrono boost that observer out. And look at this, yet again, going straight into robotics bay. He's got the pylon blocking any sort of possibility for a third base from ThorZaIN before he gets out there and kills that pylon.
And I always love seeing this sort of style out of NaNiwa. Essentially, by playing so safe, he's forced to figure out ways to, I would say, bend his responses into something that can be aggressive. Because he always wants those observers out to be Banshee-proof, to be able to defend himself appropriately, he immediately transitions into that Colossus. And even though that's potentially a very, very bumpy play that can cause a lot of issues, oh my god, he had a probe walled in. So he killed the pylon off and has successfully unpowered his gateway. Or excuse me, unpowered his robo
actually going to unpower the robotics as well. The robotics finishes, but it's unpowered.
Oh, that is a very, very blush-inducing play by NaNiwa early on. An extremely uncharacteristic mistake.
Yeah. But fortunately for him, it's going to be it is cross positions. Not going to be any sort of early aggression coming out from ThorZaIN. He's just setting up his tech, transitioning nicely. Now we've got the observer from NaNiwa floating into the main base of ThorZaIN. Going to be able to spot that there are 2 factories and 3 barracks, 2 with tech labs. So he should be able to realize that he's not in any sort of danger early on here. Another barracks being dropped for ThorZaIN. In the main base, NaNiwa now has that robotics bay powered yet again. Going to start chrono boosting that extended thermal lance. And just going to get Colossi out. I imagine he's going to wait until he has 2 or 3 and then push out. Would think this is not a timing. He's just going to push out and take his third. But let's see how he plays it as he's dropping 2 forges here.
I would just like to briefly note something that I don't think is talked about enough. How crazy the hockey setups can be for players. NaNiwa, 1 is units, 3 is nexuses, 4 is warp gates, 5 as forges, 6 is an observer, and then 7 as a random stalker, and occasionally a scouting probe. But ThorZaIN, equally weird, having 7 as just 12 arbitrarily selected SCVs in his main, now re-hotkeying those.
What? Yeah, it's going 13, 14, 12, 13, 14. Really strange to see this play.
It looks like big push coming up right now for ThorZaIN, knocking down, as QXC calls them, Pandora's Rocks. They've now been renamed as Destructible Rocks, but once upon a time they just had a bunch of question marks. Looks like NaNiwa doing his usual preparationing, and oh, look at this! NaNiwa had 2 forges upgrading 1-1 and canceled both of them upon seeing this big push coming.
Yeah, trying to chrono boost out charge now. It's not going to be in time for this initial push, but he may have to just give up his natural. No, he's pushing forward, tank sieging up. This is a terrible position for NaNiwa. He's got to be in a full retreat. Getting a lot of SCVs there. The SCV count is dropping for ThorZaIN, which is key as NaNiwa wants to just slow this down as long as possible. He doesn't have enough units to break this right away. And ThorZaIN has sacrificed a lot of economy, a lot of tech to just gain control of this position, now rallying everything out and actually making a command center behind this. So this is not all in. He can expand, but he's gotten this key position, which is so hard for Protoss to take back once Terran grasps control of it.
The fortunate thing about this particular spot, though, is that NaNiwa does have a good amount of space for those speed zealots to maneuver in. NaNiwa's brief advancement forward, it turns out, was a great play to be able to secure this wide open space. I mean, imagine if ThorZaIN was able to walk up to that choke for NaNiwa. There'd be no way those speed zealots would ever be able to pull down, but NaNiwa, ooh, getting scanned, losing his observer, but there's the speed zealots, now darting in, the stim on the Marines, but those Marines also have combat shields, so they're able to do a lot of damage. NaNiwa gets obliterated at the front door. More Colossi, more Zealots trying to get streamed in, but ThorZaIN taking this opportunity to advance way far forward. And oh, the Marines at the front! Oh no!
Yeah, that was huge. Those Colossi swipes just going to town on those ThorZaIN Marines. Let's point out how this position is different from Game 1 here, Day. There's no air units for ThorZaIN, so every time he wants to deal with a Colossus hitting him from high ground, he has to scan, and that's going to be annoying. He's getting a third command center now, going to make that into an orbital, but he has no scans ready to deal with any sort of Colossi harassment on the high ground.
That is such a great point. I mean, I was hearing the scan go off again and again and again, and I guess part of me just assumed that ThorZaIN was able to see the whole map at all points in time, but indeed, no. That is not a mechanic that Terran has yet. I mean, Heart of the Swarm's coming out, we'll see, but still. Here's the huge push coming up from NaNiwa. Big number of speed zealots moving back down again, and the Colossus count still quite high. NaNiwa ripping everything apart. That early loss of all those Marines really coming back to bite ThorZaIN, and it looks like ThorZaIN will barely hold this, but that contain is getting weaker and weaker for every time that NaNiwa goes to do a counterplay.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time before ThorZaIN is going to have to give that up. And that time may be now. Beautiful targeting by ThorZaIN, actually targeting the Colossi with his tanks, not working on the Zealots at all. And now NaNiwa has completely broken out there. He has a bit of a surplus of minerals. Let's see if he starts researching. Yes, immediately after breaking that contain, he drops +1/+1, warps in a bunch of units. Let's see if he counterattacks to try to break the third, as he has a Zealot. He's well aware of this third being up, or if he tries to take an expansion. Both very viable options here, and ThorZaIN does not have access to Vikings, doesn't have a reactor on that starport. He can make them one at a time, but has chosen to make a medevac first. So this is a dangerous time for ThorZaIN, as NaNiwa is charging forward with 3 Colossi. Scan drop, so ThorZaIN knows this is coming.
But as you've been saying before, Chill, so many scans have already been spent. Instead of mules, big amount of money lost for ThorZaIN. Just needed them so much for the aggression. It looks like NaNiwa trying to find any weakness he can. And there it is. There's the tank on the left flank. Going to pick that off. NaNiwa absolutely impeccable about abusing any slight inaccuracy in positioning. Now trying to wander up to the high ground. Oh, sees a Viking. A single Viking will end up repelling that, but NaNiwa more than prepared, has some stalkers there to join to be able to defend. We see there's the chrono boost on Blink back in the main. More Colossi being chrono boosted out. More Zealots popping out as well, and NaNiwa finally starting his third base.
Yeah, it was so important for ThorZaIN to get that Viking out. If that Viking was not out, then NaNiwa would have had free reign to just dance around with those Colossi. He's got the critical number of 4 now. +1 is at about 75%. That's both +1 armor and +1 attack. The upgrades for ThorZaIN are 0-1, so he has +1 attack on his Marines. Now loading up a medevac for a drop. Taking a look at the income tab, we can see that ThorZaIN has a little bit of a benefit of having that third up quicker, but remember, he sacrificed quite a few SCVs in that first engagement. We've got 63 SCVs for ThorZaIN, 55 for NaNiwa, and with that third base coming up and a lot of chrono boost saved up for NaNiwa, especially on his natural at 100 energy, he'll be able to crank out those probes very quickly to close that gap.
Uh-oh, look at this, Chill. We see the blink is almost done, and NaNiwa's gearing up to move down to that bottom position. And keep in mind, those Colossi did try to make a play up to that backdoor expansion for ThorZaIN, but had to pull back due to a Viking. With Blink now, NaNiwa might just prepare a large invasion up on that high ground. We see him slowly starting to work his way forward. Oh, some tanks are there to get in the way. Vikings trying to do a little bit of damage, and there's the scan. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Oh, and there he is moving up to the high ground. One stalker has been blinked up, and there is the huge blink play up onto the high ground. I hope you don't mind if I sneak this army up here, says NaNiwa, and it looks like ThorZaIN in an atrocious position. He has a lot of siege tanks, very powerful units, but need to be positioned correctly. By pulling back to defend, he's greatly weakening his front door.
And ThorZaIN has been supply blocked now by NaNiwa. Meanwhile, in the natural of NaNiwa, there has been a Marine drop. Some Stalkers were warped in, but ThorZaIN is equal to the task to take those out. But a Colossus is going to be able to take that down. And when you play Tank Marine, your position is just so entrenched. It's so difficult to move back. And NaNiwa is going to say, my job here is done. Going to blink away, now move forward with the Stalkers, snipe a Viking, and get out of there. Looks like the supply is very even here, 130 to 136. Income tab favoring ThorZaIN right now, but he's going to have to remake that third base and retake his natural expansion. NaNiwa bringing back probes to mine at his natural expansion. So the trade is over, but I feel like NaNiwa definitely got the better of that.
NaNiwa did lose 2, almost 3 Colossi on that exit out of the main, but amazing that he was able to keep that last one alive. ThorZaIN actually mix-clicked on one of those Colossi, hitting the stronger one and leaving 2 in red health, but still alive. And again, look at the funny theme that we're seeing here. NaNiwa's main, mined out. ThorZaIN's main, almost mined out. And natural, almost mined out. These players are so ridiculously aggressive that we're seeing these crazy low econ situations 20 minutes into the game yet again.
ThorZaIN's econ is actually starting to take a little bit of a hit. He's using all these scans because he wants to be aware, what is NaNiwa doing? He has no presence on the map, and if we look in his main, he's actually used supply drop 3 times when that command center was taken out to just drop that energy in exchange for the ability to bring in more units. So very nice, but he's going to take a hit on macro going into the mid game, so he's got to be careful that he starts using those macro mechanics to drop the mules, and there we see at the natural, dropping 2 more. Supplies very, very even at this point, day 169 to 166. NaNiwa going to take a bit of an economic lead as he pushes forward to take that 4th base, and he's taking an upgrade lead as well. I believe he's at 2-2. Did he cancel armor? Wow, that's surprising.
he simply never began researching it. In a sense, we're seeing NaNiwa do some amazing upgrade micro, starting the upgrade, seeing the attack, and canceling it, and then restarting it and canceling it again. Very, very interesting to see this sort of style begin to pop out more and more, and it looks like NaNiwa managed to take a little bit of an advantage by picking off a couple of free units there, and NaNiwa is brilliantly using this runaround path. It looks like he is just trying to gear up for a counterattack, wants to catch all those tanks out of position, but now ThorZaIN is the one moving back, and there's the tank sieging up, and it looks like NaNiwa is going to go for it, but Zealot's stuck in the back. No blink to let those Zealots begin to sweep forward. We see the Colossus taking massive damage, but the Zealots ripping through absolutely everything. NaNiwa now bringing in more Zealots. The entire force of ThorZaIN completely destroyed. Wow. Good game! NaNiwa wins game 2.
Very, very surprising finish there. NaNiwa just with the upgrades, bringing in the units nicely. ThorZaIN had a lot of Vikings to try to focus down the Colossus, but NaNiwa handled it perfectly, using the Stalkers to isolate that. And actually, the bigger threat turned out to be the gateway units that were able to run right up to the tanks. And ThorZaIN just didn't have his typical kiting that we saw against OGSMC. Just too much going on. He could not control it well enough, and NaNiwa punished him, taking control of game number 2.
The amazing thing to me is how unbelievably close the scores were. They were within 1,500 of each other, and I know the score is kind of an arbitrary number, but it's very unusual to have them be that close. Normally you see 30 or 40,000 point difference between a winner and a loser of a game of that length, but again, all the numbers point to it, the games themselves point to it. These two players are extraordinarily evenly matched.
Yeah, and Day, as we said in the beginning of the broadcast, it takes a little bit for players to settle in, get their mental mind focused on the game, and get comfortable with their setup, get comfortable with their opponent. And I think after seeing that game and the control we saw, both players have reached that point. We've played 2 longish macro games. They've gone either way. I guess the first game was a little bit more of a rush game, not a macro game, but not an all-in to just end the game outright. There was some control there, some opportunity for both players to play with their units. So I think we're going to see in games 3 onward, if we get to game 7, very comfortable players, and that means very well-controlled units and very well-executed strategies.
So it looks like our players will be joining the next game, game 3 on Shakura's Plateau momentarily. In the meantime, I'd just like to give a big shout out to Glider from theportraitart.com for not only drawing all of the participants of the TSL3, but representing them in that beautiful black and white. Big thanks for making the TSL look ever so more classy the way that it deserves. And of course, there is going to be a Team Liquid Star League after party in Queens. Yes. Go to teamliquid.net if you are in the mood to celebrate video game championships. And I don't know about you, Chill, but this is pretty much the event that I've been looking forward to all weekend. This is awesome.
Yeah, I was looking at $800 tickets to fly out there so that I could meet ThorZaIN and NaNiwa, and just couldn't make it happen. Shout out to my girlfriend for not making that happen. And NaNiwa saying this feel of pressure is the best. So both players feeling the pressure a little bit. As we move into game number 3, it's going to be on Shakura's Plateau right after this.